Hey, this is Chad Nelson, the CEO of the Surfrider Foundation. Welcome to this episode of The Current. Today we're going to talk to Stefanie Sekich-Quinn, Surfrider's coastal and climate expert. We're going to talk a little bit about climate change and how it's impacting our oceans and coasts. So welcome, Stefanie.
Thank you, Chad.
And maybe you can start by, you can tell us a little bit about how Surfrider got into this business in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I think you and our East Coast chapters are pretty aware. It was really Hurricane Sandy. It was kind of a wake-up call for us to say we need to start working on climate change. And then just as recreationalists, we know that our ocean is at the center of climate change. It's absorbed about 30% of the carbon that's been released into our atmosphere, 90% of the heat that's been trapped in our atmosphere. And we're already starting to see impacts from increased storm events, which is keeping us out of the water. We know future sea level rise are going to squash our surf spots. Even corals are dying at rapid rates. So at Surfrider, it's looking at our communities that are already being impacted by extreme weather events. And so we kind of look at it through the lens of community and through recreation, and it's a perfect place for us to be. And as you know, there's a ton of work that we really need to do to work on this.
There's tons of work to do, and this is a classic case of think globally and act locally, isn't it?
Exactly. So Chad, can you give us a little example of some of the victories and the work that we're doing in order to make all of this work come to fruition?
Sure. This definitely is work that requires Surfriders work at all levels, right? So we work at the local level at our chapters. We can scale that work up to the states, and then we can actually get all of our states and our chapters to work together on the federal level. But at the local level, I think we've had a lot of success, and we've been actually working on these issues for decades. So in San Diego, we've been fighting shoreline armoring from sea level rise and coastal erosion for years. And the reason we're fighting shoreline armoring is because we know that shoreline armoring will ultimately destroy our beaches as the sea tries to move towards the shore. Up in Washington State, we've been doing shoreline master planning. Washington has very progressive regulations for coastal protections. They want to balance ecosystem protection and coastal recreation and uses on their shorelines. So they're doing the kind of planning we need to be doing in the face of sea level rise. And then sort of a more defensive example is we stopped a project in Hawaii called the Kioya Resort from being built in the sort of coastal buffer zone. This is an area set aside to account for sea level rise, and it's there to prevent inappropriate development. And we took that case all the way to the Hawaiian Supreme Court, so we stopped that hotel from building in harm's way, so a way of avoiding future problems. So Steph, we've talked a lot about how Surfrider's taking action to keep development out of harm's way, whether that's not building in the coastal zone or armoring the coast, which is ultimately going to destroy our beaches with sea level rise. But what can I do tomorrow as an individual to reduce my own personal carbon footprint?
Mm-hmm. Chad, I think it's so imperative that we talk about what people can do individually. Climate change is very daunting, so these small things we can do really do make a difference at the end of the day. So it's as simple as, like we all know, let's drive less, right? Let's carpool. A perfect example of tying back to one of our programs is Rise Above Plastics. Stop using so much single-use plastics. Plastics made of petroleum, we have that vicious cycle. And another fun thing to do is plant an ocean-friendly garden. It's just having the soil is helping to absorb the carbon that's in the air. And it's really, soil is one of the most important and effective ways of sequestering carbon. And that's another one of Surfrider's programs. So, there's these little things you can do in your home. You can join a Surfrider program, or you can just become involved at the local level on all the climate change issues that you think are important.
So Steph, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Surfrider's State of the Beach report.
So we've been doing State of the Beach for 20 years. There were a lot of different things we looked at, but in the face of severe climate change, as you mentioned, we're experiencing, we decided to put a finer focus on it. So we are looking at 4 specific issues. Kind of how states deal with their sand, literally, like how they move sand around on their beaches, how they deal with development. Are they building in harm's way, or do they have smart development plans? Coastal armoring, as you mentioned, every time we build a seawall, we have problems with erosion. And then finally, and I think most importantly, is how people are going to deal with sea level rise. And unfortunately, we're starting to see that about 75% of our states are not really making the grade. So we provide very specific recommendations for each state in those 4 buckets on how they can improve themselves. So Chad, we just had an amazing campaign, the Rising Seas wetsuit. Can you talk to us a little bit about why we chose to do it and why we partnered with Vissla?
Absolutely. So we built this wetsuit for the future, and it's sort of this apocalyptic wetsuit, high tech with heads-up display, gas mask, measuring all kinds of environmental variables. And the goal here really was to shock people, wake them up, get them coveting a new high-tech gadget, and then realizing it's for sort of a pretty bleak future. But it definitely generated a strong reaction, and that was the goal, was to get people to think about what the future is going to be like if we don't take action, and hopefully motivate them to take action. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what the call to action was, why we did this, and what we're hoping to achieve.
Yeah. So our call to action is very simple. We are demanding that Congress take action on climate change. And in fact, we have an action alert right now. We have thousands of signatures. We hope to get thousands of more signatures. And in February, a bunch of us, including our awesome activists and staff, are going to Washington, D.C., and we're going to hand deliver your signatures to your specific congressional representatives. So we'll match up your addresses, we'll drop off a nice little care package. And really, again, it's that simple, as we're just making sure that Congress decides to take action, and you have a voice to do that. So we're really stoked to have this virtual march on DC and deliver all of your signatures.
So if you want your signature to be represented in Congress on February 28th, hop on our website at surfrider.org, sign that petition. We'll add your name, match it with your representative, and hand deliver that for you. Well, thank you, Steph, for sharing all this important information, and thank you for tuning in to The Current. If you want to get involved with the Surfrider Foundation and our climate work, or get involved with one of our local chapters, or join Surfrider as a member, you can do all of those things at surfrider.org.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.